I'm with Gidon Ariel, who's an Orthodox Jew. Now, we're talking about Shimon Peres, who's just died recently. Gidon, how important was Shimon Peres to Israel?
Shimon Peres was one of the founding fathers of the State of Israel. He passed away this week at the age of 93. So that's pretty old. Shimon Peres was really just getting started at 93. He had been the right-hand man of Israel's founding father, really, David Ben-Gurion, who was the first prime minister of Israel. Afterwards, he became a member of Israel's parliament and became a deputy minister and a minister in many, many different ministries until he finally became the prime minister of Israel himself, and afterwards even the president of Israel, sort of like the king of Israel, if you will. And he never rested because he was always very, very busy promoting Israel, promoting the technological advances of Israel, making sure that people would visit Israel and that people would learn about Israel directly. And as far as his political ideals were concerned, he was almost messianic in his belief for peace. He chased after peace, just like the psalmist writes, "Seek peace and pursue it." And that was Shimon Peres. He pursued some policies that many Jews in Israel, many Israelis disagreed with, thought he was taking it too far. For example, the Oslo Accords. But even still today, when we are about to bury Shimon Peres in the plot of the great heroes of the State of Israel on Mount Herzl, Israel's cemetery for its giant leaders, we are all of us together here in the State of Israel, standing as one in memory and in respect for Shimon Peres, one of Israel's greatest leaders.
Was he a good prime minister?
That's a good question. He was not only a prime minister, and I'm not going to go into all of the political history of Shimon Peres. Your listeners could look at the Wikipedia if they're interested. But he, again, depending on which perspective you have politically, he was not prime minister for a long time, for barely a year or two. But he, as the Minister of Finance in a national unity government led by Yitzhak Shamir of blessed memory, he was able to turn around the tremendous inflation that Israel was undergoing in the 80s. And so that for sure, he has much merit. And again, he had tremendously good connections with the French and with the Americans. In other words, he was definitely very, very instrumental in creating and broadening Israel's international standing. So was he a good prime minister? Like anybody, you could say it depends on what his policies and politics were. But certainly on those counts, I think that everyone will agree the answer was yes. Now, I just like to point out, I stand more on the right wing of Israel politics, and Shimon Peres was very squarely in the left wing. But when push comes to shoves, we're all Jews here. We're all Israelis, and all of us believe in our right and responsibility to be here, and we're all one big family.
Now, he was born in Poland, and his father immigrated to the then Palestine in 1932, and his family followed in 1934. Do you think this decision saved his life?
No question about it. It's very hard to say what woulda, coulda, shoulda been. But not only did it save his life, I think there's no question that God was pushing his father to move to the land of Israel, because otherwise they would have probably just been another victim of the Holocaust, while instead Shimon Peres went on to be one of the leaders of the State of Israel, which is a life-saving invention, a divine invention, to save the lives of Jews all over the world. So yes, definitely by moving to Israel, Shimon Peres not only saved his own life, but he saved the lives of many, many other Jews. And I would like to point out that even in our time It's important for Jews to recognize their right and responsibility to move to the land of Israel, or at least that opportunity, because the life that you save may be your own.
Now, did Shimon Peres do a lot of work to bring peace to Israel?
The way that you asked that question, I will say that he certainly did a lot of work attempting to bring peace to Israel. He did not succeed so much. In some ways he did. He was instrumental in the peace agreement that we have with the state of Jordan, which is unfortunately not too very strong nowadays. But there's no question that that is an important point of any international policy platform, to try to make peace with your neighbors. However, to make peace in Israel, he, unfortunately, I think he would agree with me, was a little less successful, because the spectrum of Israeli politics and the internecine fights that we have over politics and policies, unfortunately, Shimon Peres was very, very much a part of it. And I don't know that anybody would really say that Shimon Peres was the architect of Israeli internal peace. I think that he tried to bring external peace for Israel, but not so much to Israel.
Of course, he won a peace prize, didn't he? The Nobel Peace Prize.
The Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to Shimon Peres, Yitzhak Shamir, and Yasser Arafat for their efforts on the Oslo Accords in order to bring peace in the land of Israel between the state of Israel and the Palestinian nation. Tragically, this Nobel Prize, like others, I'm afraid, was made more for some efforts that had already been put in, but had not yet come to complete fruition. And obviously, since that prize was given, we've had here intifadas with buses being blown up by Palestinian terrorists, and hundreds and even thousands of Jews being killed. So this is, again, I'm not much of an authority on Nobel Peace Prizes. I understand that President Obama won a Nobel Peace Prize shortly after he was elected president. Now, I'm an American. I never heard of Obama before he was elected president, so I don't know why he won the Peace Prize, but I guess that's something important nowadays, or in those times. But you got to hand it to him that he tried, and there's no question as far as the spotlights of world media, this little tiny sliver of land, of the land of Israel, is what everybody's looking at. So anybody who tries to solve it and gets to a certain point, I guess they're deserving of the Peace Prize.
Now, he became president in 2007. Was he a good statesman?
Again, you're maybe using synonyms without thinking about them too much. Perhaps he was a statesman in that he was a jet setter, and he brought hundreds of VIPs to Israel. And he was a great friend to many, many leaders, both in countries, politics, and even in Hollywood. And he raised Israel's its brightness all throughout the world. As far as his politics were concerned, he wasn't one of the most successful Israeli politicians. He was not the shortest held prime minister, and he ran for president twice, and he only won the second time. But with God's help, he succeeded in what he was doing, and he was, no question, he was an eternal optimist.
And of course, when he retired in 2014, he was the world's oldest leading head of state.
Yes, I guess so. Again, I have a feeling that Shimon Peres winced anytime anybody called him old. Because he, even on the day of his induced coma a few weeks ago, which I guess you could say that was the beginning of his death, he addressed an international symposium of high-tech leaders from all over the world. He didn't rest for a second. And so while he might have been old chronologically, he was always new and facing the future. In fact, he amongst other Shimon Peresisms, I think you could say, let's look less at the past, and more important is to look at our future.
And he gave his life to his country, really, didn't he? His political career spanned 66 years.
Yes, and I lived in Israel for about 33 of those 66 years. I really can't say that I was a great fan of Shimon Peres for all of those 66 years. But that's exactly what a democracy is. People hate you when you're there, and they love you when you're gone. And so I personally feel great merit that I was able to live in the same state as such a giant statesman. And just as he was able to pursue peace, I think that we can hope that we too, all of us, in the way that we see fit, pursue peace between Jews and between Jews and others all throughout the world.
Was he religious at all?
That's a little hard to say. I am not in the habit of what we say in Hebrew, livdok b'tzitzit shel anashim, to check people's religiometer. I think that a person's religion, if we would call that, what is religion? A person's relationship with God. There's a story told that when he was young, a young boy of 6 or so, Shimon Peres was brought by his father to the arguably greatest Torah sage and leader at the time, Rabbi the Chafetz Chaim, who lived in Poland, and he blessed him that he would have a long life. And what's going around today is that same Chafetz Chaim lived to be 93 years old, just as Shimon Peres also lived to be 93 years old. Wow. So again, was he a religious man? He had a great identity as a Jewish person, and he had great respect for the Jewish religion as well. And he was not in a religious political party, but I think that's the less important question. The more important question is, was he as great an individual person as he was a statesman? And again, stories are told how he would reach out and do acts of loving kindness and charity, even when the spotlight was not upon him.
What's his legacy, and will Israel miss this statesman?
It's a little early, I think, to say exactly what the legacy of Shimon Peres of blessed memory is. We have still not completed the funeral. And in Israel, it takes more than just a few moments for politicians to get beyond the political squabbles of their lives, even after their deaths. Today, I don't think there are too many Americans who still have a problem with George Washington or with Abraham Lincoln. I think that everybody agrees, I may be wrong, I think everybody agrees that these were great leaders of the United States of America. We still have people, what do you mean? Everybody, basically, who's alive today, who was alive yesterday, knew Shimon Peres. So you had your personal opinion of him and of his policies during his lifetime. I think that we'll have to wait a generation or two to really be able to look at Shimon Peres as well as so many other Israeli leaders with the perspective of time and of history to really clarify what his living legacy and lasting legacy was for the land of Israel, the people of Israel, the state of Israel, and in fact, the entire world.
Okay, Gidon Ariel, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on Shimon Peres.
Thank you very much. May his memory be for blessing, and looking forward to speaking to you again.